Hello. Welcome to the wrap-up video. I can't believe the second month of the year is already gone. I know I say that like every video, but like I swear like time just goes like by so fast. But anyway, I'm ready to do the wrap-up. This month I finished 8 books. I read 4 physical, 2 ebooks, 2 audiobooks. And yeah, I did a reading vlog for 3 of them, so you can watch that video. That was the TBR that my boyfriend picked for me for the month. So I read those 3 books in a video, and I also had him guess my ratings. So that's a cool video you should check out. But yeah, I'm just gonna jump right in. I think I'm gonna start with the audiobooks that I listened to first to get those out of the way. I really don't know how I only read 2 audiobooks. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know. Work has been really busy, and that's where I listen to most of my audiobooks, so I guess that's why. Yeah, only 2. Whatever. So the first audiobook I finished this month was a reread, which was Clockwork Angel. That is a Cassandra Clare book in the Shadowhunter series. It is the first book in the Infernal Devices trilogy, which I have decided is, I think, my second favorite trilogy in that world. But, hi baby. In January, one of the partial books I listened to was one of her collections of short stories, and it had some of the characters from this series in it, and I was like, okay, I'll reread the series. So I read this book multiple times before, but basically this one is set in like the 1800s in London, and this girl discovers that she's part of the Shadowhunter world, and she is rescued by 2 Shadowhunters and taken into the Institute, and she learns about the world, and there's like a bad guy, and like all this stuff happens, but there's that. Like I said, it's my second favorite trilogy in the Shadowhunter world. My favorite one being the sequel trilogy to this one, which features the children of the main characters in this book. And one thing I like the most about the Infernal Devices trilogy is it has one of my favorite characters in it, which is Jim Carstairs. I love him so much. He is so precious. He deserves everything good in the world. And yeah, so I enjoyed my reread, and I'm gonna continue it. There's just like long holds for them, so I'm waiting for the next one to come in. And the next audiobook I listened to was not a reread. It was Leah on the Offbeat. So last month I wrote a book. It was called The Upside of Unrequited, and it was supposed to be the sequel to Simon versus the Homo Sapien Agenda, and I didn't understand how it was a sequel because it didn't have any of those characters in it. But I figured it out reading the third one, which is Leah on the Offbeat. So Leah on the Offbeat follows one of Simon's friends, Leah, and it's like all their friend group is in the book, and someone else in the friend group, her name's Abby, she's cousins with the 2 girls from The Upside of Unrequited. That's how it's connected. They live in another state though. So I feel like it should have been like a companion novel more than like a sequel, but Goodreads says it's like number 2 in the series, but whatever. So Leah on the Offbeat, like I said, follows Leah, which is one of Simon's best friends, and she's probably in the Simon book. I don't remember any of the character names, but I honestly don't even know how to describe what this book is about because it follows Leah, like the end of their senior year of high school. Prom's coming up, like it's like a coming of age book with very little romance, and honestly not even that much coming of age. Like it like centers around prom almost, which is like common in like YA books that are just coming of age, I guess. It just felt like, let's see what Goodreads says the like synopsis of the book is, because I don't even know how to describe it. Half of the description on Goodreads is just talking about Leah, like she is the odd one in the group, she's a drummer, she has a single mom, like, and then the other half is like, oh, her friend group starts to fracture and that's the plot. Like, I don't know. There's like a love, there looks like it's like the weakest love triangle I've ever seen because there are 2 love interests, but really nothing really happens with either of them. It's just like, I don't know. Like, I'm not saying I didn't like the book. Like, it was fine. I just feel like nothing really happened. And I liked the main character. I just felt like there wasn't much plot. Like, I was just like, it was kind of boring. Like, not much was really happening. Because like I said, it centered around like prom and like finding out if you're going to college and where you're going and how it's splitting up relationships and splitting up friend groups, and I don't know. It was just kind of, I don't know. Like, it was fine. It was fine. It was forgettable. And we're moving on now. So the 2 ebooks I read in February match the 2 ebooks that I read in January, and that is the second novel and the second novella in the Shatter Me series. So I read, what are they called? I read Unravel Me, which is book number 2. And then I read Fracture Me, which is a novella, which is like 2.5. Shatter Me is in a like dystopian society. It's about this girl named Juliet who has this ability where if you touch her, you're in such extreme pain that you like die. And she like, if she touches you, if you touch her, like if you're in contact with her. And so she's like, in the first book, she's like in an asylum type place because they just don't know what to do with her. Like society is like, you're a menace or whatever. And then this group of people take her from the asylum and they're like, we're going to use you as a weapon. So that's what this series is about. Of course, there's like a rebellion against the other group and it's dystopian and there's people with abilities. So I can't really go into what the second book is about because I don't want to like spoil what happens in the first book, but like that's the premise of the series. And for my notes, I said that I don't really like how Juliet acts. She's so childish and whiny. Like, I know she's 17, but, like, she is so, like, whiny. Like, she's just so annoying to be in her point of view. And, like, I don't dislike her per se, but she's just, like, so whiny. And, like, I just don't understand the decisions she makes and how she acts. And I know she's had, like, a rough life, but I feel like the way she acts doesn't really match how she, like, it's not like, oh, she was mistreated and she has, like, PTSD and so she acts this way. Like, it doesn't really feel like it's connected to that. She's just, I don't know. It's just kind of weird. There's like a love story happening, love triangle question mark. There's like stuff happening in the love world in this book and it was fine. It was continuing the story. Like I said last month, I don't love the Shatter Me books, but they're entertaining. So I'm going to keep reading them. Like they keep my attention and I'm wondering what's going to happen and if something more is going to happen to make me like the books the way people like rave about this series. So I'm going to keep reading them. So that's Unravel Me. And then I read the novella, which was Fracture Me. And the first novella was in Warner's point of view, and the second novella is in Adam's point of view. The books are in Juliet's point of view. My only note I wrote for Fracture Me is Adam is poop. I don't really like Adam. Like, I heard people say negative things about Adam, and I was like, I wonder what he's gonna do. I get it now. I don't particularly like him now either. So, the novella was literally so short. Like, I think it's under 100 pages. It's literally so short. I don't even know if I could call that a book I read this month, but I'm gonna. So that's that. I'm waiting for the next one to come in for me to read from the library, and I'm moving on to the physical books now. Okay, so the first book I finished in February was a spillover from January, and that was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This was my book club's book for January. If you don't know what this book is about, it's about this girl named Addie LaRue, and basically she's from 1714 and she's like 20 or something in 1714 and she makes this deal with this entity and basically it gets twisted. Like she's trying to get out of a situation, so she makes this deal to have freedom, but the freedom he gives her is not what she asked for, and so she becomes invisible. No one remembers her. She can meet someone and they're talking to her, and if they leave the room they forget she exists, and so she lives forever. She's like immortal and she does not age. She stays exactly the way she is and no one remembers her for 200 years because the book picks up in 2014, I think. Yeah, 2014. It's kind of sad. I would say this book is kind of sad and kind of triggering, but basically it's told in dual timelines, and so it starts like when she's like a little kid in like the past timeline, and then it jumps to 2014, and then it like will go back and you see how her life was going up until she made the deal, and then you see how she learns to live life the way she has to live life now, but then it's like juxtaposed to current day where she is like figured it out, like she's been living this life for 200 years, like she knows how to get by. And the start is very slow. Like I'll say it's very slow, and I understand people don't like this book due to that start, but once it picks up, and honestly it might not pick up till like halfway. I don't remember exactly where I feel like it like picks up. Once it picks up and you get into the plot, you understand the slow start. Like I feel like everything in the beginning is needed for you to understand her character and to be connected to her and feel for her. So I wouldn't change anything about the beginning, but it is kind of slow, so you do have to work your way through that. I didn't really know much going into this book. Like I said, it was like for my book club, so I was just like, okay, I'll read it. But there is a bit of a love story in there, and I won't say how or why because that's spoilers, but there is a love story in here. So if you're like into reading books with romance in it, this book does have romance in it. I just got so into it, and like near the end I was like, oh my god, what is happening? It got so sad near the end, and then the very last page I was just like, because I was like, that's how it's ending? Like, it was a great ending, but like also, what the hell? So yeah, I actually really like this book. I decided on a 4.5 rating for it just because, like I said, the beginning is like a little slow and it's kind of hard to get into. And some parts dragged a little bit, but like I said, I feel like everything was needed for this book. So I really enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it. It's very good, but it is kind of sad. You might cry. And yeah, that's this book. So then I started reading book that my boyfriend picked out for me to read in February, which like I said, there is a vlog for that. So the first one of that I read was The Martian. This is a sci-fi book. It does have a movie. This is the movie cover, as you can see the face on it. Yeah, so basically the US is sending people to Mars to do astronauty explory thingy, whatever. There's a group on Mars and this like storm comes in and they have to evacuate, and one of them gets injured and they think he's dead. So they leave him behind and they leave Mars. And he wakes up and he's like fine, like he's barely injured. And now he's trapped on Mars by himself and he has to figure out how to survive when there's not enough supplies there, because they were only supposed to be there for however many days. And now he's stuck there for like a year and a half until they can come rescue him. And so it's like him trying to figure out how to survive on Mars. I did not think I was gonna like this book because I'm like not super into sci-fi, not really into space, especially like adult sci-fi. Like I've read a lot of YA sci-fi in my life and I liked it, but this one I was just so hesitant going into it. But I loved this book. It was so good. It's told in Mark's point of view in like journal entries, basically. Like he has this like log where he like talks about his day every day, and he is so sarcastic and funny. Like I love his voice coming through, and it was just fascinating to me. And there's so much science talk in this book because he explains everything he's doing and like the thought process behind it and the science behind it. And I thought I wouldn't like that, but I loved it. It was like very easy to follow. It was explained so well that you could understand it even if you're not into science. I have an art degree. I could understand it though. And yeah, I really love this book. I did not want to put it down. I gave this book 5 stars. Like me wearing the romance shirt. I gave this sci-fi book 5 stars. I love this book. I loved it so much. The next book I read from the TBR he picked was I'm Glad My Mom Died, which is Jennette McCurdy's memoir. If you don't know, Jennette McCurdy was a child actress. Her mom forced her into acting when she was 6 years old, and she was mentally, emotionally, and sexually abusive towards her daughter. And this is just Jennette talking about her life, starting at like 6, and the book ends. Maybe she's like mid-20s when the book ends. It wasn't exactly clear, but it's just her like being abused and living that life and how she comes to terms with it and starts to heal from it. And I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was very fascinating that someone like her mother could exist, that like real people like that exist, and they treat their children the way she treated Jennette. It's literally insane, and I don't know how someone could go through this and be able to talk about it and be able to heal from it like Jennette has done. It was just so interesting to read this book. It was also very interesting to see like into the world of television, because like I said, she was like an actress for like almost 20 years before she quit acting. And so it was very interesting to see like behind the scenes almost of acting and like how an actor may feel and how you have no idea watching what they're acting in, because it's like she's most known for iCarly, and I grew up watching iCarly, and if you know her character, like you would not have thought that she as a person was going through everything she was going through. And so that was just so eye-opening to read about, and I really enjoyed this book. I'm not going to give it a rating because I agree with like other people when they don't give like life stories ratings, because like it's not really fair. So I'm not giving it a rating, but I really love this book and I highly recommend you read it, barring the trigger warnings, which I will put on the screen. This book flowed really well because it's like written like a novel, you know, like it's like in present tense as she's like telling the story. It flowed really well and it was easy to read in that aspect, but it is very hard topics. So if you think you can handle those topics, please read this book. It is so good and it's made me want to read more memoirs. And the last book I finished this month was Get a Life, Chloe Brown, which is another book my boyfriend picked out for me to read. Yes, he picked a romance book. How insane is that? The man who's never read romance and will never read romance picked a romance book for me to read. This one's been on my shelves for a while, which I think is why he picked it. But basically, this is the start of a series. This follows this girl named Chloe Brown, and she's chronically ill, and she kind of just like keeps to herself and doesn't really have like much of a life. And so she makes this like bucket list almost of like things she wants to do that are like bad, like, you know, spend a night out drinking, go camping, just like this stuff that she hasn't done in her life because of her like chronic illness and how she's like I wouldn't say she's introverted, but she just like keeps to herself, you know? And so she meets this guy, Red. His name's Redford, his nickname's Red. And he is the superintendent, whatever, of the apartment building she lives in. And he decides to help her with her list. And then romance happens. So I didn't like this book going into it. Well, not that I didn't like it, just the first half of it. Basically, it's enemies to lovers, but the weirdest enemies to lovers I've ever seen, because they just hate each other. And like, they just hate each other and they're so negative with each other, but in their heads, because you get both points of view, they're so attracted to each other while they hate each other that I'm just like, what is happening? Because they literally they say such negative things about each other in their heads, and they just like think about how much they want to like. And I don't get it. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And also, the language used in this book to describe body parts and like sexual actions was very vulgar and blunt. And I just wasn't expecting that from this book. And it's like, it's a romance book with spice. Like, so what? They exist, that's fine. But it was just so blunt that it took me out of the story. Like I said, they'd be thinking about each other, how much they hate each other, and they would just be describing their body parts, like their sexual body parts, in such crude ways while thinking about how they hate each other. And I was just like, what am I reading? It just took me out of the book. But I kept reading it because like, it's not that I disliked the story, like I was interested in the story and interested in the characters, so I kept reading it. And like, of course, the like enemies part got better because they like actually got to know each other and they became friends and they started falling for each other. And I ended up liking the book, actually, because I think there's things I liked about the book that allowed me to overlook the things I didn't. So I really liked that how they represented Chloe and her chronic illness, because like as someone with chronic illness, I could relate to her a lot in that aspect. I could not relate to how posh she was because I did not grow up in a mansion. So that part I was like, but like the chronic illness I can really relate to, and I appreciated that representation in a book. And the guy, he was in a past relationship that was abusive, and I also really liked the representation for that, because not very many media outlets, like movies, books, like whatever, they don't really portray men as being beings that can be abused, which is like so ridiculous, because men can be abused in relationships, mentally, emotionally, sexually, physically, they can be abused. So I really liked that this book did that, that's something that happened to him that he could talk about, that he was coming to terms with. I really like that representation in this book, and I like how it was handled in this book. So between those two things, I really liked the representation in this book, and I really liked their chemistry with each other after they stopped hating each other. After that, I thought they were, like, I liked their friendship and I thought they were, like, cute together. Because those things were done so well, in my opinion, I did end up liking this book, and I decided on 4 stars for a rating because I really liked that part, even though I didn't like the other part. And I do want to continue this series. There are 2 more books in this series because Chloe has 2 sisters, so they each have a book. So I do think I'm going to read the next one to see how I like that one. And the sisters were, of course, introduced in this book, so I know a little bit about them going into the books. And yeah, so this was decent. It was pretty good, you know? And I'm just so shocked how much I liked all the books he picked for me to read, because I was kind of hesitant wanting him to like pick books for me because I was worried I wasn't gonna like them. Because like, knowing my boyfriend, I was like, he's gonna come in here, like I told him he could only pick from my shelves, but I was like, he's gonna come in here and pick fantasy and sci-fi, not like romantasy, just like the only flat out fantasy I have, and sci-fi. But he picked like a good mix. But anyway, that's a different video. So yeah, those are all the books I read this month. I had a pretty good reading month, I think, which I feel like I say every month, but honestly, I do enjoy most of the books I read. There's very few duds in my opinion. And even if it's like kind of a mid book, I still like, my bar is so low for like books and movies. Like if I'm entertained, it's like good, you know, like it's decent if I'm entertained. It has to be like very, very bad for me to be like, that's bad, that's low stars, you know? So yeah, I like books. No complaints here. But yeah, that's everything I read this month. There are quite a few books I'm in the middle of, but I just haven't finished in time. But you know, we have March, and for like the TBR I have in March, I have something very exciting, which I'm not posting like a TBR video for it. It's just gonna be part of the vlog, which will be at the end of the month, which you'll see, and it's exciting and I'm looking forward to it. Also, March is my birthday month, so I'm not really doing anything special, but that's happening in March too. So yeah. Anyway, thanks for watching and bye.